Alright, before I can put the lower intake manifold in, I do want to show you what these valves look like. It's pretty crispy, but where you can see where it's shiny metal, that's where the fuel spray keeps it clean, and turbulence behind it starts building up. You've seen with this engine that, well, it had a 6+ trim, which, you know, anybody who works on cars will say, oh, you know, it's not too bad. But the reality is that when you have turbulence in here, you're not going to get the air in. You don't get the air out. And either you're going to be running too rich, or in the case of +6, you got air coming in that the mass air flow sensor is not reading, and therefore it thinks it's running lean. With this, I can tell you the fuel spray is pretty consistent. Not so much on that cylinder, but this one is probably the cleanest one I have. I haven't even touched any of this yet, so this is as we seen it when we pulled it up. I am going to clean it, but I'm going to tell you what, you do not want to be spraying a bunch of solvent down the throat of this thing. For one, it ain't going to start very happy, and when it does, it's going to be violent when it takes off. And that you don't want. So we're going to just lightly scrape at this, get as much off as we can, especially around the valves. And probably run some seafoam through a couple tanks, and you know, hopefully you can get the rest. But yeah, I can't leave it like this. So we're going to clean it, and I'm going to show you after I'm done how clean it is, or cleaner. I can't say it's going to be perfect, because this you got to be real careful of. You use solvents, you got to use such a conservative amount. You don't want the cylinders being built up with it. It just won't burn it. When it does, it's going to fire off. It's not going to be a happy start. It's not going to be a happy start anyway, but you definitely don't want to compound the issue. I'm halfway through cleaning. What I found that actually worked the best was taking a rag and spraying a brake cleaner and just wiping it. The problem is if your valves are open, the trash is going to go through the valves and into the piston. Don't want that. Let me show you the dirty side. Yeah, it's tedious work. Most dealerships and independent shops would just put it all back together the way it was. They wouldn't take the time to clean. And that's the difference between Keith and Kevin's Repair and Restoration and other shops. You know, we do repair, but this is restoration work. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more tedious. It's a little bit more discipline. But when I put it all back together and I don't have to dig in again, it'll be well worth it. I want to show you how clean I got these cylinders. Well, can't see anything, need flashlight. Yep, all of them look that clean. Tell you what, it took me a good 4 or 5 hours to get that. Now there's a little bit of staining right there you see on the intake runner. That's okay, I'm not going to worry about that. But as long as it's not like a valley or a speed bump. I'll show you the rest of the cylinders we can get to. She's got clean blowholes. It was a turbo. Some of these, though, I mean, I can only get so clean. I mean, I did a pretty good job. Took a long time, though. Alright, before you put your intake down, use the shop vac, suck it out one last time, and you should be good to go. And if you want to know where the knock sensor is, in the worst place ever, right in the center of the engine. So if you get a knock code, guess what? Intake's coming off. We were going to replace it, but it was $100, and we didn't have any codes, so I don't know that I'm going to replace that. Well, the thing is, the next time this intake has to come off, it's only $30. I don't have to lose any coolant. Yeah. It's not like having to replace that, and a thermostat, and then a heated hose, and all that other nonsense. Alright, it's a quick suck, and then I'll show you some gasket mountings. Welcome back to the cleaning segment of the QX4 intakes. Now this is the lower intake, and there is a butterfly system here. I'm trying to figure out what's the point of this. I mean, I can tell it's for velocity because you can kind of see that it doesn't actually shut the air off. So it's probably something to do with the active torque management. In the paper it actually says this has active fuel management, so I'm guessing a bunch of butterflies is one way to do it, or special programming for fuel injectors. Then needless to say, no matter what, when you take this thing apart this far, you really need to clean this stuff. And it doesn't look like it's bad, but in person it looks really bad. Let me get light on this. I mean, just from me touching it, you see how much goop comes off? Yeah, and it's on both sides. It's not uncommon for Nissan engines to burn a little bit of oil. And we know we have a stuck PCV valve because we found oil in a couple places, and it's pretty common. But yeah, one thing you don't want to do, don't take this to the car wash, because the one thing that will happen if you try to take this to the car wash instead of the way I'm going to clean it, you're going to seize these baffles up. And I'm sure there's going to be a code for that, probably air management code. I've been seeing a lot of that lately, like I think it's PO1101. Now it can vary by manufacturer, but either way, you tear it down this far, clean it. What can you use to clean it? We're going to use some super clean and a little bit of elbow grease. And I should be able to get this thing pretty much spotless. And also the other thing too is this grime you see is also in the intake and the valves. So if you do have a little bit of a rough idle, which this one did, not too bad, you know, you want to clean that up. And I'll show you that too. But pretty much clean your parts. That's what I'm going to tell you. And I'll show you this after I'm done cleaning. Now we're going to use the aerosol. You'd be surprised how much crud this engine for 150,000 miles has actually produced. We're going to hand clean each baffle and then clean all the gasket surfaces. Be careful not to get any crap in the diaphragm here. Here, yeah, don't get any crap in there. Stuff's a little gummy. A little bit more difficult than I thought. I'll try some of the concentrate. Yeah, air movement in an engine is vital, especially with these VVT engines, variable valve timing, because really an engine's just an over glorified air compressor. Now, with running some seafoam through the gas fix this issue, it might help it. I don't know, when I show you the engine side, you can see where the fuel is sprayed by where it's clean, and you can see where the oil accumulates. And on this, if it's not clean and you put your new gasket down, you're going to create an air leak and you're going to defeat the purpose of doing this repair. I don't know if a little brake cleaner might help. That's some pretty sticky stuff. Yeah, the mid and upper intake aren't too bad, but this lower one and the intake valves. Brake cleaner seemed to break it off. There's still some right here. The camera's not going to be able to pick it up. There's still a little bit here. The last thing you want are these flaps getting stuck. I'm wondering if this intake is steel. It's so hard to tell nowadays. Nope, it's aluminum. No sticky stick. We're going to let the chemical work on this side a little bit. We still got a little bit of cleaning to do, but not too bad. But as you can see now, you can see the gold. You can see a little bit where the air comes through. So I imagine that's for deflecting air at certain RPMs. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Now we're going to try this brake cleaner and see if it'll even just break it without having to use... Nope. Still have to scrub at it. Stuff is like a real kind of oily, cakey mess. So a combination of super clean, now there's a part of this inside baffle. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get it, because I think I'm going to have to come from the back side in. Yeah, getting the back side of these baffles are a little interesting. Alright, I'm going to finish cleaning this off camera and I'm going to show you the final results. Alright, I've spent, I don't know, about 3 hours cleaning this thing. That was 3 bottles of brake cleaner and some super clean. I'll tell you what, a lot of scraping. But you gotta be real careful. This is aluminum. You don't scrape this surface at all. You clean this with alcoholic wipe or brake cleaner. Now I'm not done prepping gaskets yet. I haven't even got that far, but I want to show you something kind of cool. If you got a vacuum tool to test, well, we can use this for brakes, but we test this for all our vacuum stuff. I'll show you how these baffles work. So that's about 5 pounds of vacuum, and between 7 and 10 you got max closure. Now, when I was doing some research, this is actually called a swirl port system. So by actuating these butterflies, you get different swirls, velocities going into the cylinder. So that's the reason why these engines can produce so much power in such small displacement. Now I'm going to kind of slowly release the pressure. So what I did while I was cleaning is I actually used the butterfly system, well, test the servo for one, but I did it this way so I could clean it one way and then open it up, clean the other way. But yeah, there's a what's called SCT solenoid, so swirl control solenoid, and pretty much from there the vacuum of the engine will close these as computer commands, and the code that you'd get if you had a problem in this is actually called P1130. I thought it'd be a P1101. That's a different problem altogether. That's an airflow issue. But yeah, if you got a P1130 and you've replaced the solenoid, the next thing to check would be this butterfly valve right here. I'll put an arrow up now. That should actuate with up to 7 pounds of vacuum. And see, what could happen is this thing could get so clogged up that the butterflies don't shut, or they get jammed up with carbon at each of the port. Next thing you know, this thing will seem like it's frozen when in reality it's the butterfly system in here. There's one rod that runs completely through this. I mean, one servo when engine vacuum is applied. But we tested this system, it works good. The only thing left to do is just clean up the gasket surface. There's a lower that goes to the engine, each one of these. So there's 2 sets of gaskets. So there's a gasket there. This is for the mid intake. It's for the engine side, and you definitely want these clean. So last step to do this job right, you just need to clean these ports off and make sure there's no bumps. Otherwise, it's not going to torque right, and you'll have an air leak. Get a potential misfire or PO171, 172 lean bank. But other than that, that's how we clean one of those. 3 bottles of brake cleaner, a little bit of scraping, and a lot of hard work. Alright, we're going to clean our next part. Now we're on to the cleaning of the mid-intake. Now, what's kind of cool about these vehicles with the dual intake systems, we call them dual intakes, one's one intake system, but dual being that it has 2 purposes. Horsepower, torque. When you want torque, you shut these baffles off, and then the air has to come all the way through, and it has to go all the way down. When you want horsepower, you should open this intake up, and you have air flowing down on both sides. Now, one thing when you got the system apart, you want to check and make sure the baffles are actually working. So take a vacuum gauge, or a vacuum gun, whatever you want to call it, and open up the valve. And stop at about 10 pounds. You don't want to blow out the diaphragm up here. So you can see right now it works. It's a little sluggish because there's a little bit of crud. As I noticed with the lower intake, when I clean that up, the sucker actually works pretty good now. So I gotta tell Mama to watch the speeding tickets. This intake's not as bad. I'm not going to clean these runners. I'm only going to clean these butterfly valves. And it shouldn't be as bad as it was when I was cleaning the lower intake. On this one, we're going to see if brake cleaner can break it first. Okay, now we'll close the valves. Okay, this right here is your PCV valve, so all the carbon that gets built up from combustion gets burned through here, which is why it's a little bit dirtier here than, say, the rest of it. Not too bad. We'll clean that port, make sure it's good. Okay, we'll open the valves up. Let that drain. Probably just shoot a little bit of brake cleaner down the holes here. Alright, then we'll tip it. Alright, clean the gasket surface up. because again I had a slight air leak, and now after seeing all this I couldn't tell you if it was a vacuum leak, a gasket leak. We're adding +6, so I mean 0's perfect, and when we see trims in the 6s to 10s, we know we got some unmetered air somewhere. But the thing with these variable valve timing type engines and variable intakes, you know, it could be that the computer has the engine set in a mode that requires it to run a little lean, and you just make up for it with a little extra fuel. Now there's no RTV used on these gaskets. It's just strictly gasket and correct torque sequence, which I will give a diagram for that when we get there. Alright, let's clean both sides of your gasket mating surface. Make sure it's smooth, because again, any dirt here is going to give you an air leak, and that will get you codes. You'll be chasing your tail trying to figure out what is it. But do your job once right the first time, and most of the time you won't have an issue once you get it started back up, and you won't have to do this job. You won't have to do it again unless something breaks, like knock sensor or hose or something stupid. Alright, we gotta check the lower mating surface. This is where it bolts to the lower intakes. There's a gasket for that. Got a little bit of carbon buildup where the butterflies are shut most of the time, so I'm going to have to actually scrape that a little bit. You don't need to get crazy with it, just lightly scrape it and let the brake cleaner do its job. I'm going to get you a close-up so you can see what I'm scraping at. Alright, on to the hat. Now this isn't as bad as, say, the lower and mid. Not the same. We're going to clean it.
Seems a lot cleaner than the other one.
Well, that's because the air keeps it clean. Yeah, I'm finding I'm having to break it first with the brake cleaner and then come in and clean it. Not too bad.
Ugh. Huffing fumes.
Yep, we've become some huffers.
Apparently, who? Man, wow, that's dirty. Ugh! I just got a full blast of it. How do people like doing this stuff? Just like huffing it, man.
I've never understood huffers.
I don't either.
I don't even like huffing when it's part of my job.
I know. Ugh. I'm gonna have a sore throat here in a second. Smells nice sometimes. Not all the time.
Alright, other than that, before you install these parts, we're going to do one more cleaning of the gasket surfaces. I'll do that with brake clean and a hand towel. But other than that, we've cleaned all our intakes and we're about ready to go back in with it. But that's how we do our cleaning around here. Nothing special, just a lot of handwork. This gasket surface here, this is for the throttle body. So you definitely want this cleaned. Any air leaks after the mass airflow will lean this engine out. Alright, on to the part change.